This is the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors meeting.
Next item is we approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a motion for the minutes of the previous meeting? There's a motion by Mr. Sorensen, a second by Mr. Peterson. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 27-0.
Okay, as we know today, one of the important items on the agenda is a reading of our 2016 proposed budget. And I invite Finance Director Heidi Dabrowski up. The management team has been working on this mostly all year. And the Finance Committee has been working with Heidi and the management team since probably the start of September. And I welcome Heidi and good morning.
Good morning. Ooh. That's loud. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
In your packet was the 2016 budget summary. Did I turn it off? Oh, okay. So we're gonna go through that this morning and give you an overview as to where we've been over the past few months through the budget process. And just to point out, just gonna kind of talk about it. To read the budget is a little bit difficult because it's numbers, but during the budget process, as you all know, we start out early part of July really working through the budget process as a detailed part of the process. And each department head, along with their committees of jurisdiction, which you all sit on, goes through that portion of the budget and reviews it on the operational side of the process. And at that point, the budget is comprised for salaries and wages of the employees that are in those departments and any cost, and the cost associated with the fringes that are with those employees. Once those budgets are approved at the committee of jurisdiction level, they come to our department and we analyze it and take a peek at it and see where we're at as far as revenues versus expenditures. The state then provides us with the levy limits and what we're allowed to increase the levy, and we look at that and see where we need to cut and move forward. And this year, it was a good process. I think it went well. We were able to increase our levy by about $131,000, which is pretty a small portion. That is a good process that we go through. And then the Finance Committee reviews the overall budget as a whole, and any department at any time can be called to look at the more detailed portion of the budget. The key highlights of the budget you can find on page 4 of the budget that I sent out in the packets. Personnel services, as you know, is probably the biggest asset that we have in the county. The budget that we are proposing increases the salary schedule by 1.25% cost of living. There are no increase to the budget for health insurance premiums. We're able to keep those stable. And then the employer contribution rates for the retirement piece decreased slightly for 2016. The EAP contribution at the department level increased by 30%, which seems really high, but it's a $12 per employee annual increase, and that's to fund health awareness and wellness programs throughout the process. The unemployment compensation program is another, what we would call an employee benefit, and the overall increase to that is $3,000. So that is part of the increase within the budget. And then we have in the area of public safety, we reviewed that budget in detail, and most of the impact would be a loss of revenue in the prisoner housing of $131,000. Want to make sure that I clarify that that's state prisoners in a different district. It would be that we are no longer housing because vacancies opened up in a jail in that district. So those prisoners are no longer coming to Waupaca County. We had some increases in their contracted services for prisoner expense, and that had an impact on the budget. The other significant change that was made in the budget was in the area of transportation services fund. The Finance Committee has requested a $500,000 increase to levy to fund future highway construction projects. And then the library aids, which is a special purpose levy, actually decreased by $4,065. Our debt service payment increased $73,960, or 1.25%. However, the levy portion of debt actually increased $242,278. And if you remember, in 2015, we applied a capital interest from the 2014 bond issue in the amount of $168,000. So that's why you're seeing that levy increase in the debt service. In capital outlay, we had implemented the $800,000 levy last year to start the capital improvement program. There is really no increase to levy for the capital improvement program. The capital outlay has increased. However, we're using fund balance either restricted, assigned, or committed for the purpose of those capital outlay purchases. Through the project process, then we start looking at some of our economical type revenue or our non-program revenue, such as interest on investments, sales tax revenue, those areas, and evaluate what the year this so far is showing us. And we feel that the sales tax projection could increase by $288,000, which then helped offset some of the increases in expenditures. Now, when we talk about levy limits, there's 3 types of levy that we have when we apportion the levy. We have a special purpose levy that covers the library aids and the bridge aids. And then we have the debt service levy, which really isn't under levy limits. And then we have the operating levy. In 2015, our unused capacity was approximately, in the debt service area, we had an unused debt capacity of $4.6 million. Now what that means is when you do the levy, when you look at the levy limits, you have your operating levy and you have your debt levy. Waupaca County has $4.6 million of their debt sitting in the operating levy. So we have unused debt capacity. So when you're increasing your levy by $631,000, $500,000 of that is your debt capacity that we're utilizing, and then $131,000 is the levy limits that we're allowed to increase. So, and as the proposed budget is coming to you, it is, we're actually decreasing our unused debt capacity to $4.3 million. So we still have $4.3 million of our debt capacity within our operating levy, and utilizing that $500,000 to start building a balance that is committed for the purpose of future highway construction projects. There's no operational changes within the budget. There's no reduction of services. It's just remaining status quo. There's some positions that were created within the Health and Human Services area. There was no levy impact for that. Those are all being funded through either reducing expenditures for contracts or increasing or capturing more revenues to fund those positions. So you see a number of new positions being created in the Health and Human Services area, but there is no levy impact for those positions. I'm kind of skipping all over, and I apologize, but it's hard to go through this. Also, the fund balance piece is always something that we look at. And if you look at page 10 and 11, you can see that we are utilizing fund balances in the following areas. On page 10 in the general fund, $20,000 is being utilized to fund capital jail improvements. And then in the capital outlay, the capital improvement program, we're levying $800,000, but we're also using an additional $585 to fund capital outlay purchases. And in the prisoner telephone funds, the assigned fund balance of $41,185 will be funding the transport vehicle. And the election budget will be utilizing $20,100 of the assigned fund balance for the election program. And then the Lakeview Manor Road Access Program, we anticipate $19,140 of rental income to come in that will be assigned, so that will actually increase that fund balance. Most significantly, we always want to look at that as unassigned fund balance. And we don't usually like to budget utilizing unassigned fund balance, but for the 2016 budget, we're utilizing $33,847 of unassigned fund balance, and that is for the one-time reduction to the recycling grant that will be reinstated in 2017. So we feel we're comfortable with utilizing that $33,000 because that program is in the biennial budget will be coming back then in 2017. So that revenue we'll be able to not use that next year for that purpose. Page 11 shows your other funds. Your special revenue funds, when you adopt your budget, you're committing that those funds are for that purpose. The only way that you can take those funds from those special revenue funds is through county board resolution. So then if you looked at, on the first section is the Transportation Services Fund, you would see that negative $500,000. That's actually increasing the fund balance in the Transportation Services Fund. That would be that you're committing it for highway construction projects. And then Human Services is not budgeting any fund balance usage through the budget process. And then you see your big amount under your restricted for capital projects. That's your bond proceeds that we're going to be spending down in 2016. And then the nursing home is utilizing unrestricted fund balance of $166,689. The summary, I'm flipping back again to page 6. This is your overall summary of the operations of your levy for 2016. And the unit of government of where you're seeing increases or decreases. The general government area is decreasing the levy by $53,864. The public safety, we talked about that. That's most significantly in the area of the corrections. Public works and solid waste recycling, $5,670. Health and human services budget in the general fund is your veteran services is a health and human services that's decreasing by $13,880. Culture, rec, and education is increasing $20,406. Conservation and development increase of $26,625. And then when you see transfer to other funds, that's the transfer to the capital projects fund to cover the cost of your capital improvement program. You can see the proposed levy is $800,000, but we're utilizing the fund balance of $516 to fund those. The contingency fund increased by $938, and then sales tax is actually creating a decrease to your levy by $288,000. Grants and contributions, not restricted to a specific program. Those are more your that would be in the treasurer's area where computer aid, they're just non-program type revenues. Those are decreasing the levy by $31,765, and your unrestricted investment earnings is decreasing the levy by $13,970. Transportation Services Fund increasing the levy by $521,806. $500,000 is for that we're going to be committing for future highway construction projects. The remainder, $21,806, is the salary and fringes of the highway operations that's being charged back to the Transportation Services Fund. No, all the other funds, there is no levy increase until the Lakeview Manor Nursing Home as a levy increase of $27,523. So the operating levy is an increase of $393,423. $500,000 of that, again, is for the construction project piece. Your special purpose levy, that's, again, not part of your levy limits. That's a decrease of $4,065 in your library aids. And then you have your debt service budget. Again, the expenditures are only increasing $76,000, but last year we had that $168 that we applied of interest investment. So the actual levy increase to debt service is $242,278. So your combined overall levy impact is $631,636, or 2.57%. And then at the bottom of the page, you can see what your mill rates are doing, which is applied against your equalized value. And so the mill rate is actually increasing by 2.36%, but your levy dollars are increasing by 2.57%. There's a large list of well, let me just keep going here. Again, we have to indicate within the budget document the reserves or the fund balances that we're utilizing in each of the funds, which is what you'll see on page 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then we have a little bit of narrative about the budget and what it all entails through the process. I won't read through that. You can read through it as you'd like. Page 15 and 16 is the public hearing notice. This is what the public hearing will be held on November 10th at 9 o'clock, at which time the resolution will come before the board to adopt the budget as proposed. So that's on page 15 and 16. Page 17, what I try to do is show you the levy limit worksheet. It's a little bit, it's difficult to explain it. It's difficult but I want to show you what we're talking about. The levy limits we had a little bit more capacity last year than we had this year, because our net new construction was not as high as it was last year. Last year, our net new construction was 0.605%. Our net new construction this year was 0.573%. So it was a decrease there. Plus it also takes into account your terminated TID percentage, which was also lower in 2015 versus 14 for those budgets. And then the special purpose levy is stated below. There's one line item within the budget, it's state special charges. That is not imposed on your levy limits, so that is also broken out here to come to your total property tax levy. And then that indicates your unused debt capacity. Page 18 shows how we take the budget and apportion it throughout each of the municipalities, and then off that, the taxpayers receive their bill based upon their assessed value once we've apportioned it out to each of the municipalities. So you're seeing about a 16 cent increase in your rate, which is about $16 on a $100,000 home. And then page 19 gives you a history of where we've been, what the increases have been over the years. And then page 20 just breaks out how we were going to distribute each of those aid, each of those levies to each of those municipalities based upon the forestry mill comes directly from the state, the county health, and then the bridge aids, libraries, and how I came up with all the numbers that are shown on page 18 in more detail. And the rest of it gives you a little bit broken out by fund, by revenue, by source, kind of is more of a detail that comes into that summary page. More than happy to go through that. I just don't know, it really shows you where, first by the unit of government, general government, public safety, those areas, and then I also break it out by object, what's the cost of personal services versus last year. You see that throughout the next few pages, 25, 26 through 27, and then 28 and 29 gives you more detailed based upon the type of business that we're doing and what the increases were throughout that process. Page 31 lists out the new positions that I talked about. The page and I believe those resolutions are later on your agenda for today. These new positions are incorporated within the budget already. In the Department of Corporation Counsel, they've created the Assistant Corporation Counsel position was created. And this position is funded by a reduction of contracted legal services within the Corporation Counsel in the child support area. We won't be contracting out those legal services with the Assistant Corp Counsel piece, in addition to a reorganization structure of that department. In the Conservation Department, they've expanded a conservation technician 0.5 position to a full-time position. That position is being funded by increased service revenue. And then again, you've seen the Health and Human Services. There's 5 new full-time positions proposed within the budget, and those, again, positions are being funded by either additional revenue sources or reduction in contract services. We are, meaning we're contracting for that service right now, but we're bringing in an employee to actually provide that service. The early intervention manager is being expanded from a 0.6 to a 0.8 position. And in the highway operation fund, there is no levy impact in the highway operations, but that position is a full-time shop foreman in their organization structure. So with those new positions inserted in the budget, pages 32 through 41 gives you an organization structure by department as to what positions are within that department. Now, not only there were some positions that were also eliminated through the budget process. We don't list that in here, either through reorg or positions that have been left vacant that are no longer deemed as needed within that department. I'm not sure right at the top of my head everything that was eliminated, but there were some positions that were budgeted in 2015 that are no longer in the 2016 budget. And I think you mostly see that in the general government area where you see that reduction in levy of 53,000. That is mostly due to a reduction of position. Then on page 42 through 51, this is the capital outlay that we have budgeted in the 2016 budget. Won't be going, if you want me to, I can go through that in detail, but if you have questions, please let me know. And I tried to really give you a description as to what each of those projects mean and, what the description of the project, but then you see the total project cost, but then if you look off to the right, it shows you how we are funding those projects, either through direct tax levy, the capital improvement program. Some of them have grants and contributions that are coming in or that will help fund some of them, restricted bond proceeds, or other restricted funds or other assigned funds that have been assigned at the Finance Committee level. So overall, in the governmental funds, on page 49, There's 6.2 million budgeted for total project cost in the 2016 budget. Your direct tax levy is 982,842. 800,000 of that is that capital improvement program. And then you've got your capital improvement program. We're utilizing fund balance of 585,685. There's $110,000 coming in for grants and contributions. Restricted bond proceeds are funding $4.4 million of the project cost. Restricted funds, 75,000. That's jail improvement, mostly in the jail improvement area. I think it's all in the jail improvement restricted. And then 41,185 is being utilized for assigned fund balance. Page 50 is the enterprise fund, Lakeview Manor Enterprise Fund. These are the capital outlay expenditures in their budget. And remember that you're seeing smaller number project costs. The nursing home is under different regulations as to what constitutes a capital item. Our policy indicates $5,000 is a capital item. The nursing home is under different regulations. So their capital outlay is always at a smaller threshold than what our capital outlay in the general government funds are. And then your highway operations has a list of their equipment purchases that they will be funding from their revenue that they receive on their machinery operations. And then we break out by each fund, where pages 52 starts out breaking out by fund. You know, your general fund, which is your main operating fund. Page 52 shows you all the different areas of expenditure, revenues and expenditures. Page 53 breaks out expenditures by object. Continues to go through for each of the funds for that, for each of those areas. And then when you skip forward, if you're interested, page 66 to the end of this book is we try to break out by program what the expenditures are, what the revenues are, any fund balance that we've applied to that program, and then our proposed tax levy, and then what the 2015 proposed tax levy was for each of those programs, and then a percent of increase or decrease in that area. Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if you want me to go into more detail or if you just want to open it up to questions.
I think we'll open it up to questions before we go any further here. You've heard some facts and figures of the 2016 proposed budget by Heidi. I have to say that Dwayne Fedorowitz is our finance chairman of the committee, and we worked close teamwork with Heidi. And do you have any comments, Dwayne, on the proposed budget?
Mr. Chairman, the only comments I would have is that the discussion on the 500,000, and that did go eventually went through the finance committee. But that 500,000 is really the sole. People have to understand the sole reason for the 500,000 is trying to get ahead of or a lack of what the state government is doing in the expenditures for monies for roads. So by doing the 500,000, that's really the only impact on this budget this year, and that would be the $16 per $100,000 piece of property. And I don't want to take that lightly. On the other hand, it turns out to be probably a little more equitable than a wheel tax or any other direction by going this direction. But it also helps us down the road in case bond prices would go up if we bond again for roads down the road, down the road too. Kind of pun on words there. But if we do need to bond again, this would hedge us a little bit in case bonding costs would go up, because anytime you have a bond, that interest monies from that bond do not really stay in the county much. That really goes beyond us. So I just want to make sure everybody understands the sole increase in the budget this year, and I think Heidi did a very good job in putting this all together too, is basically that 500,000 going forward for the roads. Now, if you think about it, it's similar to what we did last year. Last year we did the same thing with that 800,000, and once you got that set at that level, barring anything next year, we wouldn't have to increase again. If we kept 500 going, it's a one-shot deal, but then it stays at that level going down the road unless some other project would come up. But I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Okay, Supervisor Boyer.
I'd like you to turn to page 64, Lakeview Manor. And I believe, Heidi, you or Sherry told me that there would be about 1.4 million in their enterprise account at the end of December. If you look under the second column, we're going to tax the taxpayer $937,000, and then you drop down, and Lakeview's going to take out of their enterprise $166,000. I'd like to see that be $700,000 that they have to take out.
Supervisor Boyer, we're not making any changes today. It's not on the agenda, so it's just questions and information. At the reading of the budget, there can be amendments and that type of thing, but, okay. Public hearing, I mean, I'm sorry. Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor McClellan.
I have some concern about the 1.25% raise to all employees, and the reason I have this concern is, as an administrator, I was more highly in favor of a dollar amount to each individual in the past, because under the Charlie Carlson study, we were trying to compact everything and bring everything together. Well, the 1.5% puts a $100,000 employee getting $1,200, or 1.25 gets $1,250, and the $50,000 employee gets $625. So now we're just expanding it out again, and I'm not a believer in that. My belief is I should say to Heidi, what is 1.25% of the total county employee budget?
Overall,
If you took all raises, 1.25%.
I think we calculate that out, and once we get it to this point, it's hard to differentiate that out, because first of all, when the departments put together their budget, all they're getting is the step increases. So all employees are out on the step based upon the Carlson study. They're moving through their steps. Now those individuals, and Mandy in the back can step in at any point if I miss talking. Anybody that's moving through those steps, we budget as though they will move through the steps. However, if they don't have they all have to go through an evaluation period, and if they don't meet expectations through the evaluation, they will not receive their step. So that is where we're at on that piece. And then in the end, once we see where we're at, the Human Resources Committee takes a look at cost of living outside of, and sees what the county can afford and what is the cost of living, in order to make sure that that schedule continues to move with the correlating, so that you continue to remain competitive on your schedule itself. So the cost of living is just increasing that schedule to keep up with all the other units of government that are increasing, putting their cost of living on their schedule. However, the employee themselves may not move through the step structure based upon their evaluation.
All I was asking was for a dollar amount.
And well, the overall increase to, let me just see on page, I just gotta find it here. On page 27, Personnel services increased $820,881. That's your the salaries for everybody moving through the steps, plus the 1.25% on the step structure. Your increase to FICA, your Social Security tax and your Medicare tax on that increase, your WRS, retirement, and then your health insurance, the EAP, all of the benefits that are associated with that. So the overall increase is $820,000. I would have to research and backtrack to see what the actual cost of living to salary and fringes was through the budget process, at what point that came into effect, what that cost was. Because first you budget at the step, then you apply the 1.25, and I want to say it was like 300,000 maybe, right around 300,000 was the salary portion of that 1.25 increase.
And if we divided that 300 and some thousand by the number of full-time equivalent employees, that's where I'm going after. That I think that milk and gas cost the $50,000 employee just as much as the expensive people in the back of the room, and I like them all. But I'm being real honest when I say that, and as a middle school administrator, I used to preach that hey, what I pay for, they need to pay for, and otherwise the gap keeps expanding, and that's what I'm against. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Fedowitz?
I just have a comment to Mr. McClellan's argument or idea there. In a normal respect, I would agree with you, Mr. McClellan, but in this case, this 1.25 is strictly looked at the cost of living. It has nothing to do with the structural change or the ability of the individual in the job or the steps, as Heidi alluded to. So the cost of living for the person that makes $100,000, his cost of living goes up the same as the cost of living as the person that makes $15,000. That's just part of life, and that's really the way the Carlson thing was set up. Thank you.
Zog. Mr. Zog.
Heidi, my question is kind of a follow-up with Joe's. According to the federal government, the consumer price index had no inflation this year, no cost of living. So I'm curious as to where you get the 1.25%. And the second part of my comment is we paid the Carlson people, what, $75,000 or $90,000 for this study. We found out that there were several of our people in the top of the pay scale, and we were nice to not decrease their pay at all, but by the same token, we kind of compounded it by giving them a $525 bonus last year. Now we're proposing to do it this year. I just thought it doesn't make sense to me.
With the 525 stipend that we're giving to those individuals, they would not be receiving the 1.25 because they're not on a schedule. They're off the schedule.
I understand that's one or the other.
But they're, again, in comment to Mr. Fedowitz, they still have a cost of living also. They also have a cost of living in their life, just like everyone else does. When we look at it, the Human Resources Committee looks at that cost of living and kind of look at what other counties and municipalities are doing surrounding us. And I did not know that at the federal level that there was no. I thought at the state level I thought there was a consumer price. Well, the consumer price index is really different than the cost of living, is it not?
They use both to one to determine the other. And the feds, because of the drastic drop in the price of gas, decided there was no cost of living on the federal level, which takes care of all 50 states, I'm assuming. So therefore, there was no cost of living increase in the Social Security recipients, according to their calculations.
Thank you, Mr. Zog. I just have to mention this too, that in my many meetings with other counties and consortiums, and we do talk about this pre-budget, about what we're thinking about for cost of living increases, and I know the last couple of months it's gone around the table, and I think at 1.25 is very reasonable what some other counties are doing. Many are going to 1.75, some even 2%. And yes, they may be bigger than us, but that's just the way it is. When I say 1.25 or proposing, I have to say that they said, you know, we're pretty meager. But I said, this is Waupaca County, and this is what we plan to do. So we're not overdoing it by any means, just making that point. Other comments? Oh, Supervisor Pullman.
Also, in regards to the Social Security, they're not getting an increase, plus they're looking at a $50 a month Medicare increase, plus we're going to increase their property taxes. I think people on the outside are looking at this more like, how am I going to afford the ongoing cost? I realize we need to increase things to keep our budgets level, but you know, including with the nursing home increases and what they're looking at doing next year or the following year, you know, we really need to tighten up some of our budgets. I mean, it was recommended on, you know, mainly highway and the nursing home that we really had to look at tightening up those particular types of budgets. And maybe we just need to look at the wage increase more at a dollar amount like Supervisor McClone stated, just so we have something to look at in the difference in cost from the lower employees to the paid employees to the higher paid employees, to look more at a balanced dollar amount.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Pullman. Other comments? Other questions? Did you have something more that you wanted to address us?
I just wanted to point out that you received in your packet a summary budget. I do have over 600-page document, which is located either in the county clerk's office for viewing or also on the county website. It's a little difficult to find on the county website. It's under there's tabs across the top. There's a government tab. Underneath there's financial reports. If you click on that, this full book is out there if you want to view it. Putting a 600-page book in front of you is not only costly but overwhelming. So just wanted to point that out, that that's there, and that, again, if I'm available for questions, if you want to email me or call me to set up an appointment, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Heidi. Thank you, Mr. Federwitz. You can be excused. I just have to say, not belittling the increase in the budget. I was listening to the show that I do up at Shawano. They had my colleague from the North County on the radio talking about his budget. And he was saying, you know, it's unfortunate the taxes have to go up, but they are because of the services they're expanding and their roads and so on. He said, but look at it this way. It's only 3 packs of cigarettes on a $100,000 house. We're down to 2 packs, I think, here. But anyhow, that was a comment he made on the radio. So with that, I want to thank you, Heidi. And let's go on to... We'll go on to our DHHS Director, Chuck Price, Department of Health and Human Services updates. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, everybody. Actually, I think I need to plug in my piece. All right. Where is it, Casey? Technology is not one of my strong suits. Casey has a suit coat on today, so we have to make sure everybody sees that. Before I get started, I think on your in each of your respective seats, you have the organizational chart for our department, and so that should be the most current and up to date. And I think kind of going on the heels of Heidi's presentation, when we talk about budget and talk about impacts, we've got probably one of the largest departments in the county. We have probably one of the largest budgets. And so, you know, the last couple times that I've been before the county board, I try to start and just kind of get a show of hands of who's been up on second floor in the last year. All right, excellent, good. And so I think that's important because I think knowing the programs that we have to offer, you know, you see the huge impact in terms of the dollars that we have, but it's not just a pot of money that the whole agency runs out of. And so each of those boxes that you see there that represent our respective units have funding streams attached to them, in some cases multiple funding streams, and in some of the cases it's actual positions that have funding streams attached to it. So it's a pretty complex piece of budgeting and funding streams that we have to work with. And the thing that I'd mention as well is that for the last several years, probably 8 or more, there's been 0% increase to our budget. And I think that speaks volumes over the course of the last 8 years or so. It's been the same amount of tax levy going into our programs, about 3.1 million. And so when we do that comparatively, if we look down the road at Waupaca County, within their health and human services, there's 30+% of levy going in. We're about less than 20%, probably less than 18% of our budget is tax levy. So Waupaca, just to the south, supports their health and human services with about 30 to 32% of tax levy. And so thinking about that, even a 10% increase to what we're doing would be about $1 million extra back into health and human services. Today, though, I wanted to talk about having that organizational chart in front of you. What does that mean to move an agency forward? What does that mean to make sure that everybody's moving in the same direction? And so the title for today is really looking at workforce development. How do we make sure that we're bringing the right folks on and doing the work in the right direction? And so if I started out my presentation about workforce development and made a commitment to you as the county board to say that I commit to you that we will do our job mediocre. We're just going to do it mediocre. We're just going to do status quo, keep moving forward. You can see that the definition of mediocre is of only moderate quality, not very good. Doing nothing is a great way to change nothing. And so I think that would probably sound ridiculous if I came up here before you and said, this is the standard we're going to hold ourselves to. And so I'd prefer, and the way that we've been operating over the last couple of years, is to commit ourselves to a culture of excellence. And so when you look at this piece, when you look at this definition, we're looking at the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. And so I think we can all agree that there's no doubt that the citizens that we serve deserve nothing less than our excellence. And so that's what we're raising the bar to. And when we raise the bar, that comes with different expectations, not only on our staff, but on our management and on our administration. This is one of my favorite quotes when we talk about organizational transformation, and we can apply this whether it's Department of Health and Human Services, any of our departments, or even the county board. It matters what leaders do or don't do. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. And that's something we talk about a lot within Health and Human Services. When you're trying to move 125, almost 130 people towards the same goal, towards the same direction, you have to be able to hold folks accountable and make sure that we're on the same page. So when we talk about the workforce development piece, this is really kind of the basic structure, the basic skeleton that we use. It doesn't look fancy, but when you look at intentional recruitment, it's also about intentional messaging about what are we doing, what are we here for, who are we here to serve. And so when we bring folks on, looking for who fits those seats, who can be the best possible addition to our team, and those that are with us already, how do we continue to show and develop folks that are already here. As folks come on board, we have an orientation process where folks know about the different programs all of our managers give presentations on what their positions are about, what their units are about. We also orient them to the philosophy of the agency and the principles that we hold to our structure. We provide training that's above and beyond the core, and so there's always core trainings that folks have to go through in the majority of the positions that we have, and those are minimum qualifications. And so that we look at how do we train folks above and beyond that? How do we start developing, I guess if what you'd want to call it, an elite workforce, and not just training, but applying that training. And so you can train as much as you want, but if you don't apply it to the work that you're doing and you're not seeing growth in the community or in the folks that you're serving, then it's a waste of dollars. And so when you do the training and you apply the training, you have to support staff. You have to support them through kind of the bumps and the successes. And even when all those things work out, even when you go through the recruitment piece, you get the right folks in, you go through the training, sometimes you still have to hold folks accountable. And I would hope that this county board would want us to do that so that we make sure that we're moving in the right direction all along the way. And so accountability, even when we talk about that, we talk about how do we support managers through that, holding managers accountable, holding staff accountable, holding administration accountable. And I think I'd showed this slide last year, but just as a reminder, this is the skeleton of all of our decision making. These are the principles that we hold within Health and Human Services for all decision making when it comes to personnel decisions, when it comes to grant decisions, program decisions, staffing with cases. These are the principles that our staff and our managers know when we apply decisions. When we apply these principles to our decisions, they understand where those pieces are, where they understand where our decisions are coming from. And I think the quote that goes with this at the top, it's always the simple that produces the marvelous. These are pretty simple concepts, but the hard part is sticking to them. And then that was the skeleton for our whole agency. Then when we talk about leadership and who needs to make sure that we're adhering to those principles, we talk about management. And the management team, I believe I showed this last year as well. I'm not going to go read through the whole thing, but to understand that we have a leadership charter that all of our managers kind of adhere to, they're in support of, and this is our vow back to our staff to say, as managers, this is what we believe in. So when we make decisions, when we move forward, understand that our management team is united moving forward when we do this. And actually a majority of our management team is here in the back, and I would say, I can say confidently that I think they're all in terms of where we're going, what are we doing, the mission that we have before us in order to serve our community. So when you put these things together and you're looking at bringing the right folks in, having them subscribe and adhere to the principles, having a management team that's supportive, hopefully what you then have is a healthy workforce that can do the work that we're asking them to do. And so how do you measure that? We look at secondary trauma, the impact of the work that folks are doing on them personally. We look at burnout scores, and we look at compassion satisfaction, or the satisfaction you get from doing your work, or job satisfaction, if you want to call it that. And so at the beginning of the year, earlier this year, we had all of our staff submit to a professional quality of life scale. The University of Wisconsin Green Bay helped us with the study. It was anonymous that folks could submit to. They got their own results, but it was all done through the university. And when the scores came back, it's significant to note that all of our staff, so we're talking receptionists, therapists, economic support, all staff submitted, that Waupaca County, when we matched up against the national average, is below average for secondary trauma, below average for burnout, and above average for compassion satisfaction. So at the very least, at the black and white, we're seeing that we have a healthy workforce that's ready to take on the tough work. This slide is significant in that when we did the same test, did the same survey back in 2012 with a group of social workers in the children and families area, so child welfare, juvenile justice, children's long-term support, birth to 3, coordinated services teams. And so that was an area back in 2012, there was a concern. We had lots of turnover and concerns about where things were going with the unit. And so these numbers look at the staff that were here at that time that are here still. Now keep in mind, we had quite a few staff that moved on, probably because burnout rates at the time In 2012, for the unit as a whole, we're probably up closer to 90%. Secondary trauma was up closer to 90%. The compassion satisfaction was below 10%. And so that was not a healthy workforce at that point. So the folks that have stayed on with us and through the different organizational changes that we've done, you can see that we've had an increase with those folks in their compassion satisfaction. We've had decreases in their burnout scores, decreases in their secondary trauma. And so I think that shows that the agency as a whole is moving in the right direction with the supports that we're giving and the training that we're giving back to the staff. And with that, that should have an impact on your retention. And so when we look at the retention rates going back to 2011, you can see 2012, the 5%, that's significant just to note that that was when we had new director come on board. And so there was a bit of a status quo, nothing was going to get changed in a short period of time. And so I think you can see that that part wasn't impacted. The following year when we start talking about here's where we're going, here's what we're doing, resignation rates went up. As soon as we got established of where we're going, the trainings, the organizational message, it drops down to 2.4, and right now sitting underneath 5%. And we compare that nationally, when you look at workforce, they're saying that it should be about 10% or better. And so I think we're well below the national average, and I think if you looked at health and human service related industries, that number is going to be even higher in terms of resignation rates. So when you have a healthy workforce that can take on the work, that means that you should start seeing success in the work that you're doing. And so I'm just putting this slide up here to show you that our out-of-home care budget is probably the most volatile and most expensive for us. And so when you see RCC placements, that's residential placements, placements like Rawhide, placements like Tomorrow's Children. Over the last 15 months, with the same workforce that's showing that they're ready and willing and able to do the work, we've seen a 50% decrease in residential placements. And so I want to also show or just mention that these are safe, that we're doing this on the safe side, making sure the kids are safe as we move them into less restrictive placements. But 50% decrease in residential placements, a 14% decrease in all-around county foster placements, with an increase in kinship placements. And kinship means with relative. And so there's a philosophy shift going on saying that our first and foremost thought when it comes to children that might be in need of safety and placement, that we're looking at a statement of no Waupaca County child will be placed with a stranger. And so just think about that from a screening possibility, whether that's reality all the time or not, what could happen if that were the case. We're reducing trauma, reducing adverse childhood experiences for those kids. And so our staff are responding, our staff and managers are responding when we have decrease in overall placements, increase in relative placements, with the overall decrease in 30% in our out-of-home care costs. And so that's one of our largest ticket items with our budget. And if we can take those savings, put them back into prevention and keep kids from going further into our system or keep families from going further into our system, I think that's money well spent. So people are noticing. This is noticing statewide. And so it doesn't matter, I don't think, which side of the aisle you're on. We're being noticed at the highest levels of the state. We were asked to be one of the keynote speakers this summer at the Fostering Future Summit, which is was kind of the state meeting around trauma-informed care. And that's been the approach that we've been using for organizational change. And so we were the keynote only afternoon speaker, the only county asked to speak to what trauma-informed care was. It's 300 people in Madison, 300 plus people in Wausau. And as a result, we were invited to have dinner with First Lady Walker at the executive residence. Fostering Futures and Trauma-Informed Care is one of her one of her projects that she's working on, most dear to her. So that's from kind of left to right is Shannon Kelly, our deputy director, Lisa Grasshoff, manager, Voc Rehab manager out at WCI, myself, First Lady Walker, Casey Kaepernick, our Healthy Beginnings and Trauma-Informed Care coordinator, and then the woman on the right is Elizabeth Hudson, the director of the Office of Children's Mental Health. And just a couple more, just to show you, that it's getting noticed and put out there on First Lady Walker's Facebook page. And the pictures on the right just kind of show the presentation that we had done in Wausau. And so the impact that we're able to tell our story about the things that we're doing in Waupaca County all across the state. Not only statewide, but being recognized nationally. Both Casey Family Programs, it was probably the largest foundation in the country based out of Seattle around child welfare reform. They are very interested and invested in what we're doing in terms of, you saw the numbers of retention for child welfare, you saw the numbers of decreases in out-of-home care for kids. That's in stark contrast to what's going on across the state and in the nation. And so they're interested in how are we doing this and how is this even happening. And so they're providing technical assistance. They have a person assigned to us, or to Wisconsin, but really to us on a monthly basis for almost a year now. A woman by the name of Christine Norbit flies in from New Jersey under Casey Family Programs permission to come and talk with us around leadership development and management development. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. With that, a new family programs, and specifically the executive director of a new family programs, under contract with Casey Family Programs on our behalf, has been working with us probably since about March around leadership development, program development. How do we continue to change the way human services are done, and specifically how child welfare is reformed? And so just those two pieces on a monthly basis. We've had folks from Casey fly in from both New Jersey, Los Angeles. The executive director from ANU drives in from Minneapolis just to talk with us about what are we doing with our practice and how can they help support what we're doing. And with that, I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is a list of presentations and trainings that we've been able to do just this year. And this is just with a statewide audience. This doesn't include any of the local trainings that we've been able to do with local agencies, local service providers. Has nothing to do with trainings we've done with other counties and with other state agencies. And I think when we look down below, the last bullet point is staff recognition. We've had staff recognized for the work that they're doing, both being asked to speak at statewide conferences about the work that they're doing and receiving awards based on their work. So what's the return on investment? So we're out there doing all these different pieces. What's the return? What's in it for Waupaca County? These are all either trainings, grants, pilots that have come our way just because of the work that we've been doing. And so we're looking, this is just this year, the trainings and things that have come back into our agency to support the work that we're doing, to support the workers and the hard work that they've been able to do. And so we're looking at, if we had to fund all these trainings, if we had to fund all these programs, there's absolutely no way we'd be able to do that. And so we're probably talking about tens of thousands of dollars just in training alone. When we look at down below with the leadership development with ANU and Casey, to have every month a half a day for all of our managers to go through leadership development is pretty impressive. And to also know that those folks are coming from across the country to help support what we're doing. So when you think of all that, that can be a little scary too, because we're pushing the envelope on a lot of different areas and a lot of different practice areas and pushing on some of the status quo. And so I asked just kind of a general story of, what are we afraid of? We see the success that we're going through, that we're experiencing when it comes to our community, when we see that children are safely placed at home, that we're mitigating traumas, that we're mitigating adverse childhood experiences. And so is it the changing or challenging of the status quo? Is it the personnel-related issues that might come with that? Because again, the accountability piece is huge. If we're going to keep moving a system, we've got to have everybody on board and moving with us. Too much, too fast? Is it uncomfortable? All those things are scary. But I think the bottom line question is, what if we don't? What if we don't do those things? What if our out-of-home care costs continue to skyrocket? What if we don't place kids safely? And so what it means, what will it mean in return? I think what we're already seeing is a healthy, elite, confident, competent, and compassionate workforce able to meet the demands of an incredibly difficult workload. We're talking about at very high levels of a community where everyone is safe and connected. And so what if? What if it's your child, your grandchild, your partner, your spouse? If we're practicing mediocre, is that okay? should we be continuing to press towards excellence? And what I'd say to that is that we're not done. We've done a lot to change. We've made incredible progress, but we're not done. In saying that, we continue to need the support of this board. We need the support of our Health and Human Services Committee to continue to make these changes. And so we need your trust, we need your support, and I would ask that anywhere along the lines, if there are any questions about what we've been up to or where we're going, I'm more than happy to entertain those questions, either here today or come on up to second floor and we can talk a little bit more in depth there. So my last quote that I'll end with is, people who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those doing it. I think if we would have stopped when people said it can't be done, we'd be back at the status quo and we'd be back at the retention levels that we had years ago. So that's my report today. I just wanted the board to be aware of where we're at workforce development wise. Again, one of the largest departments that you have, and so want you all to know what we're doing to make sure that we're successful in doing our work. Thank you.
Any questions for Chuck, Supervisor Penny?
Chuck, I've noticed in your budget you've anticipated over $13 million in revenues. Is there any chance that during the course of 2016, maybe at the state or federal level, that something's going to take place where we're not going to get those revenues that you anticipated?
I think that's something that can happen every single year. Something could pop up both at state or federal level where they say you're not going to get those pieces, but anything that we've gone forward with and planned for, the state has given us the go-ahead to go and do that. They're committed to those programs and things that we're putting our efforts towards and our resources towards. And so at this point, we have no reason to believe that that would be any different than any other program or any other year.
Any other questions? Well, I just want, on behalf of the county board, Mr. Price, I want to thank you for your efforts and your professional staff out there for tremendous strides you've made and statewide.
Thank you.
Thank him for us too. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We'll take a short break, recess of maybe 8 minutes.
And before you break, will you press your attendance buttons again, please? I had to shut it off when we were.
Okay, we'll begin our meeting once again on Sunday, September 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. A number of us went down to the WCA conference in La Crosse. I'm going to ask those of you that were down there if you have any comments of the conference and what we might have learned. Is there anyone that would like to come forth and with a short spiel on what we learned at the WCA conference? I do have something in the end. It's about the business meeting that I had to attend, but Dwayne?
Our chairman, Mr. Keppen, asked if I wanted to say anything regarding the conferences. The only thing I was going to say is it's always difficult when you're if you're not at the conference and you're supposed to report to somebody that was, because you weren't there. And what I say or somebody else that was at the conference says, well, how do you know that's what must happen? But anyway, having said that, the only reason I want to say just a few things is I had the privilege, I left this morning from the Kalahari down at Wisconsin Dells. Was also this weekend was the Wisconsin Towns Association convention. And the governor arrived yesterday unbeknown to us, and he spoke about a half an hour. And the only thing that was dear to me on both of these conferences has to do with transportation. And as Mary alluded here, it's tough. We don't want to always raise monies for the wrong reason. And transportation is a difficult subject. And I'll just report on what he said, and then the committee or the breakout sessions that I sat through with the legislators down there yesterday. It kind of dovetails off from La Crosse. But I just want to mention about transportation. I personally talked to at least 20 people up in my area in Clintonville, and I wanted to talk to the people that had property that was that probably were low-income people and had homes of $100,000 or less. And there wasn't a one person, when I explained what we were doing with the county budget here, that did not want us to add money in there for better roads in our county. Because he said, one realignment to my car, he says, I'm home free. And he says, I had to have 2 realignments last year going down County Trungai. So anyway, I understand the situation of transportation, and I am conservative to that standpoint. But the governor and the people yesterday, this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. There's just no agreement. What the governor wanted to say yesterday, but thank goodness one of the lobbyists talked to him prior. One of his approaches was going to be that by the mileage that you drive. So when you sell a car, they take the mileage and how many miles you drove, and that's how you're going to pay for the extra use of the road. Well, they took a poll in our room regarding that statement, and there wasn't a single hand went up. So this lobbyist says, I told the governor, that's why he didn't speak about it at the convention. It was dead on arrival. So I don't know the answer. Like I said once before, and Mr. Kepin mentioned it, my wife's family comes from Iowa. They raised their gas tax down there 10 cents. And as I talked to my brother-in-law down there, he said 2 days after it happened, nobody said another word. However, the governor believes that this is a tax on the working people by raising the gas tax. So I think of all the comments that I heard down there, there were things like having a fee on campers. Evidently, people that got campers don't pay any fees on an annual basis. They were talking about that. They were talking, I kept hearing 5 cents a gallon on gas, and probably 25 in registration fee seemed to be the most common. But if you have any other suggestion, there were suggestions from everything out there. But when you sat down with the people, and we sat in a room there and listened to legislation people, how it affects Pat or it affects Jack and me, sometimes we don't think about it. And so that's where it's hard to come to a consensus. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fredowitz. Was Transportation Secretary Gottlieb there? Okay, I'll just give a brief update of my trip to the conference. I had to arrive on Sunday, September 20th. We had a 1 o'clock annual WC annual business meeting, which I am a delegate, of course, of Waupaca County, one of 72 delegates. And of course, as I had mentioned before, Waupaca County, I was a part of the transformation of the new, the whole new structure of the WSCA. 4 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be doing restructuring of the office, of the management office. And that all got done. It was always controversial, and this was going to be controversial. So this was brought up to a vote, and after a lot of questions, it did go through with some revisions. And I'll just go over a little bit about it. Lance Plimmel of Wood County was installed at the annual banquet this year, and he will be the last president of the WSCA, per se. Because next spring in May, the board will now vote for the new head of the WSCA, and he won't be called a president any longer. He'll be called chairman of the board, like a county board chair or committee chair. And that will begin next May. And he will be the permanent, I should not say permanent, he'll be the vice president, the vice chair of WCA. So every 2 years now, this will be a 2-year term, every 2 years they will select a new chairman of the WSCA. And also no longer will past presidents of WCA be ex officio like myself or any of the others, Willie Johnson or any of the others. We have to win the election in the district. We have 2 members of our district that belong to the WCA board. Those were all changes that the board had to vote on, and of course there was a lot of controversy about this, as there was in our committee meeting that I think I met 4 or 5 times, and we finally got a consensus we're going to go ahead with this. and it did go through. So, going back to the original election, Lance Plimmel, we all know Lance of Wood County. He's been down here, great guy. He will be our president until May, as will Vice Chair Greg Moore. Will be the first, I should say, vice president of, he's probably there. He'll be the vice president. And Andy Ross is the second vice president of Columbia County. All great guys. How that hierarchy will straighten out in May, I don't know. But that's the new way it'll be. However, Milwaukee County Board Chair Theodore Lipscomb had a problem with the county board, with the WCA board as it was. He said that he felt that we should have 2 more minority members on that board, and after a lot of discussion, that was approved, and so we'll have 2 additional WCA board members being appointed by the chair from the minority group. It was also advised that some counties up north, some county districts up north only have 1 WCA board member. It's going to be mandatory that every district in the state have at least 2. Like our district has 2, some have 3. So the north small counties will be be better apportioned for the WCA board, and that was a good thing. So that was a big discussion. It was a rather long meeting. Other notations to some of the things I went to, and I think we mentioned this before, the WCA joined the coalition of the Wisconsin Towns Association, the League of Municipalities, and the American Council of Engineering Companies for transportation fundy outreach. We got a number of powerful groups here, but Dwayne said the challenges that's going on between the governor and the Secretary Gottlieb and the legislature it's just ongoing. It was mentioned though that the U.S. DOT fact sheet shows Wisconsin road conditions rank 3rd worst in the nation, with 71% of our roads in mediocre or poor condition. Seems high to me, but that was mentioned. Other than that, I did attend options to financing for counties put on by an administrator. I had it here someplace, of a county that I thought, why am I even here? Because he didn't make much sense to me, as our way of budgeting with our management team and Heidi is much more efficient than he was going through. But of course, he was an administrator of a northern county, and that was a waste of time that he even went there. Other than that, I thought it was one of the lesser WCA conferences I've been to, and I've been to, 12 of them now. And I really prefer the legislative conference that's coming up in February. It's a day shorter, and it's more compact, and we have much more information leveled out there than we do in this general 3 days of meetings and so on. So that's all I have in my report. Anybody else have any report from the WCA conference? Mr. McClone.
I went to an interesting one late on Tuesday afternoon, and it was put on by the FBI and security and software and security on the computers and what's going on. And each hacking situation they have to deal with to figure out how they hacked in. So there is no perfect security system. They talked about, like when you think about Kaspersky and McAfee, that they went on to tell the situation that happened in the Bakken in North Dakota. And they said it was a Chinese group was trying to get into an oil company, and they couldn't get in. They had such a good preventative security system. However, this group was ordering their food at lunch on their iPhones. So they hacked into the place where they were getting their food, and that's how they got into the North Dakota Oil Company. It was scary from what the guy had to say, and I don't think we can be secure enough. Scottrade was hacked into. I'm a user of Scottrade, and I got a big message from them on what I got to do. So it is really something what's going on out there, and each case is separate because you don't know how they're doing it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClone. Very briefly. Yes.
To echo Dwayne's feeling, that was a big topic of subject of conversation at the La Crosse conference also, transportation. Not so much in the meetings, but after the meetings in the hallways and and some of you guys went to bars, I know that. It was a mediocre conference, I echo Dick's remarks. I did make it for part of the business meeting, and I was truly amazed at the depth of that business meeting. Like Dick said, there were an awful lot of changes. It took a long time, and I was amazed at how thorough that business meeting was. I attended the opening session, and this is for the sheriff. They did an outstanding opening ceremony, Sheriff. Two of the Sheriff's Department members from there came down with the flags, and they had on brown uniforms. So I knew right away they were from the Sheriff's Department. I attended a meeting at Baker Tilly, and because of that, I had them here at our exec meeting, and they did a presentation on department audits. That didn't go over too well with some of our departments because, you know, I put myself in their position, and I was audited once in Outagamie County, but it turned out very well because the departments get a big buy-in. It's not like, you know, I'm here to audit you and I'm really going to change things. And it doesn't happen that way. And some of the key indicators of that would be when a department head retires. That would be the time for somebody to come in and take a good look at the department to make sure that everything that's being done is done correctly. We've all heard, you know, that's how we always did, and that's not a good statement. I also attended the program that Dick attended, and it was kind of, the only thing I thought might be interesting was they talked program budgeting, and I'm sure Heidi knows what program budgeting is. They had I think 44 programs, Dick, and I don't know, to me it seems a lot of wasted time. I like line item budgeting. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, and maybe there's something to this, but I still like line item budgeting. All in all, I agree with Dick. It wasn't the best conference I've ever been to. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. One last thank you here before I forget. I want to thank our Finance Director, Heidi Dombrowski, to get up really early in the morning to drive to my office on last Wednesday to be on the Waupaca County radio show for an hour with me talking about the 2016 budget. Just did an outstanding job, and I even learned some more things as she made her presentation. So thanks again, Heidi, for getting up for the 8 o'clock program, driving all that distance. And she even was in a good mood, so that was good. Okay, we'll go on to ordinance and/or amendments to the General Code of Ordinances. A, repeal Chapter 4, Section 4.05 Code of Ordinances, create an internal investment policy.
This eliminates this whole section of Chapter 4, which is the highlighted area that was in your packet. And last month we had handed you out the investment policy, and that policy will be monitored in the County Treasurer's Office and with the Finance and HR Committee.
There's a motion by Supervisor Craig for approval. Do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Fedorowicz. Discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote? There we go. Motion carries 27-0.
Item A, repeal Section 7.14 of Code 7 Court of Ordinances and replace with a supporting statewide ban on the use of mobile telephones while driving.
This came up with legislative and judicial. This chapter, we tried to repeal it last time because we did find out that it is not a proper ordinance. So they would like to repeal Section 7.14, but also then you'll notice that resolution number 25 on your agenda supports having to send that resolution to support a statewide ban on mobile telephone usage.
There's a motion by Supervisor Terry Murphy for approval. Is there a second by Supervisor Gene Sorensen? Questions or discussion?
How did you vote last time? Did you vote no? Thanks, sir. Yeah, no, we're good.
How about the second?
The second doesn't matter. Okay.
Any questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-1.
Item C, Chapter 34, Amendment 2015-594, zoning petition Z-033-15, Town of Little Wolf for RCN-N district to AR district with a conditional use permit for a campground and camping resort. Mr. Braun, good morning.
So this is for a campground in the town of Little Wolf they'd like to get established. This is up by the Cedar Springs Golf Course. So right now they're currently zoned rural commercial neighborhood, and it's required for them to be zoned ag retention. Campgrounds are conditional uses within ag retention, so that's the reason for this rezone.
A motion by Supervisor Dave Johnson for approval, and a second by Supervisor Terry Murphy. Discussion?
I'm sorry.
You're going to? Got it. David Johnson and Terry Murphy. Have to go slower for ancient equipment. I don't mean Mary, but. Yes?
Do you have any idea how many sites or where exactly it's going to be?
Yeah, it's a phased operation. If you're familiar with where their driving range is right now, they're going to be replacing the driving range. And they're going to be also moving a tee box. I believe there's a par 3 tee box that they're going to be moving, but it's going to be by the driving range. And so right now, it's going to be on a phased system. So phase 1 is going to include, they're only going to be maybe half dozen to 15 sites, and they're going to see how it goes, and they're going to expand from there. They're going to also be putting in a sanitary facility. Initially, they're going to be using the clubhouse, but they're going to be putting in a separate sanitary facility.
Other discussion or questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 27-0.
And as much as I created ordinance and introduced them, I know why you did. I know why you did.
Okay, resolutions. A, resolution number 2515-16, support statewide ban on mobile telephone use while driving.
And this is the resolution in conjunction with repealing our ordinance. Now therefore be it resolved, the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors desires to start a statewide effort to increase public safety on all county highways by amending Wisconsin Statute 346.89 Pren 5 to prohibit mobile telephone use while operating a motor vehicle. Therefore be it resolved that the Waupaca County Clerk shall forward a copy of this resolution to Waupaca County State Legislators, Governor Scott Walker, Wisconsin Counties Association, and all other Wisconsin counties. Waupaca County Legislative, Judicial, Ethics, Safety, and Security Committee.
Is there a motion for approval by Dennis Kussman and second by Jared Murphy? Questions or discussion? Supervisor Fedorowicz.
That's just a point of interest. Yesterday, that particular bill was discussed also down there. And the bill that's moving on through right now is to have this ban through working zones only.
Interesting enough, the last fatality in Shawano County with the highway department is because of a dog running around in the car with a driver. Supervisor Craig?
I was interested too in the definitions and what it really was, where it talks about just construction zones or work zones. I had the unfortunate experience of having an accident near my house, so naturally I went out and gawked to see how the fire department, the sheriff's department, the hazmat team, how they all acted and reacted within this. And it was totally amazing to see the number of people using their cell phones as they came through, being flagged on a one-lane highway on Highway 54. And even the truck drivers with their mobile devices attached to their heads were talking on their phones, and other people had just the cell phone. So I'm totally in agreement. You need to pay attention when you come to these specific areas of slowing down, and I can tell you which ones didn't, when you're in a zone and there are workers are there.
I did get a call saying you're out there, so maybe that was.
Scared them all.
Any other comments or discussion?
Just briefly, that the two fatalities I'm thinking about right now, neither one of them occurred in a construction zone, so I just fail to see what they're talking about. I think it should be statewide, like the rest.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 27-0.
Item B, resolution number 2615-16, repeal statutory provisions concerning shoreline zoning standards. Mr. Brown's on his way up.
Oh, is he?
So this resolution is in response to Act 55. This was the governor's budget. Inside that budget, he had a major policy change where he changed how we can enforce certain shoreline zoning standards. This particular resolution is being passed around all throughout the northern parts of the county, and it's making its way our way now. Several counties have already passed this. The biggest issue that's facing the northern counties is the land divisions. This change within Act 55 allows for much smaller lots. And the northern counties have lake classification studies, as we did as well. And what this is allowing for is, say you had a wilderness lakes where you required larger lots, wider lots. The changes in the shoreline or the governor's budget did away with all that. So that was what really started this. There's several other things that's changing the way we, as a Waupaca County. Number one, our lake classification study is no longer valid, but non-conforming structures is a big piece of our when it comes to enforcement. They're not required to come in for permits anymore for vertical expansions. It's causing some problems. So what this is saying here is we're looking to repeal those provisions and go back through the public process. I mean, that's really the big issue with this, is that it wasn't properly vetted. And the changes to NR 115 in the past has gone through years and years of public hearings and input from the counties and the DNR. Whereas this was just put into the budget. This has already gone through the Planning and Zoning Committee and also Land and Water and Legislative and Judicial.
Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Mr. Zog. Do we have a second out here? Second by Mr. Hendrick. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Please.
So the way the governor made it, it's easier for people to get to do things than what we want them to do?
In
Is that
some
what you're saying?
circumstances, yes.
Less red tape.
There's things that they weren't allowed to do before, like boathouses is a perfect example. We've always prohibited boathouses since 1997. Now you can build a boathouse. And you can build a boathouse up to 35 feet tall if you wanted to, based on the changes that were made. Now, I can tell you that there is going to be a fix-it bill coming through the fall session. They're already looking at making some changes to that. Recently, we had a conference, and our lobbyist had mentioned that they're looking at changing that from 35 feet to 2 stories. Now we need to define what 2 stories means.
Other questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26-1.
Item C, resolution number 15-16, transfer county-owned property to the town of Dayton, section 16.
You did have on your desk a map of that area and a transfer of property information from Roger Holman, I believe, put that out there for the Parks and Rec. This is just transferring a piece of land that's on Stratton Lake in the town of Dayton. They used it for a boat ramp, I believe, and so they just want to turn it over to the town.
There's a motion by Supervisor Peterson, a second by Supervisor Muck. Discussion, Supervisor Craig.
Can we have Roger explain what this is all about? Because typically, the county takes from towns boat landings and launches and does them, and this one is exactly the opposite, so
He just
I'd
left
sort of
his
like
perch
to know.
on his way up.
Thank you.
This boat landing has been managed by the town since 1958, and they've been taking care of the road and doing everything since then. And it was everybody thought it was their property, and then Don in the property lister's office notified us that it was listed under the county. And so, in looking at it at this time, we felt it was best to allow them to continue to maintain the boat landing and the road, and be able to use their own rules and regulations there. Since it's county property, that could be a gray area. So it was kind of decided that it would be best served for the people just to give it back, if you will, to what they thought they already had. Because they thought they owned the property all along.
Does the county have other boat landings in the town of Dayton that we take care of?
We've had, on Dakin Minor, we're eased to the county from Dayton,
Okay.
with the idea that we control all the boat landings on the chain, thereby put our user fee on, be a uniform user fee. We looked at this landing as a potential for that, but due to the fact we just don't have the staff and it's not really on our route, it was felt this would better serve to be a town boat landing.
Roger, could the town close this boat ramp at any time?
No, not without approval from the DNR. And I don't think there is a push to close it. The Stratton Lake District basically felt it would be better served if it was managed by the town, since it's a small lake and that in there. So they also made that recommendation.
Mr. Ellis?
I just have a comment about the last bullet point down here. This is a transfer of property owned by the county to the town. The last sentence should probably just have a period at the end of town of Dayton and not go on to say for continued maintenance. We talk about that in the paragraph right above that. So to me, the summary sentence is the last one. It should line up with what the title of this is, transferring property. It has nothing to do with for maintenance because.
You're reading my notes, not the resolution.
Oh, okay.
Those are just notes I gave to you.
Thank you.
I was trying to get the understanding out there that it has been maintained since
Thank
1958
you.
by the town.
Other questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 27-0.
Mandy? Could you come up for the next one, please? Item D, resolution number 15-16, 2016 Waupaca County employee wages and salaries. We briefly talked a little bit about it, but I'll have our Human Resource Director expand on it.
Sure. I know there was some questions a little bit earlier about the general across-the-board cost of living. And what we do in putting together some of our thoughts at the HR committee level as to whether or not what type of cost of living increase are you going to award, what is it in the budget that you can afford. We look to a number of different resources. Obviously, we communicate amongst all of our HR colleagues at different counties as to what they're doing. But then we also utilize some data that we get. And I just want to share a couple of things with you before you go ahead and vote on that resolution. But what they look at is various different regions of the state. And then what we are in is kind of area 3 in that midsection of the county. And if you look about, or midsection of the state, and then they break it down, what is everybody doing for wage increases in those various different regions? And so we're considered central Wisconsin. And then breaking down that by region, you can see cities are looking at 1.9% for their exempt non-union employees, all the way down to 1.4 for transit employees. So this gets broken down into that type of detail. On the county side, you're seeing 1.4 for exempt non-union, 1.3 for non-exempt, which are your hourly paid, 1.8 for union police officers, firefighters, 1.3 for areas where they have that type of population. So we're in the ballpark of what you're seeing. Towns are at 1.6, 1.7 in the towns for any union police force that they may have. Technical colleges are always higher. They're closer to the 2% range. School districts, 1.6 to 1.9. So you can see, like Dick said, we're in the ballpark. We're probably a little on the low side compared to what other wages are out there. But looking at all of that data and weighing that with what our budget has available, we felt it was important to do an across-the-board increase for our employees. So that's what we bring to you today.
Okay, that's the explanation of it. Is there a motion for approval? So motion by Supervisor Fredowitz. Is there a second? Second. Second by Vice Chair Barrington. Discussion? Questions?
I have a question. Possibly that this, as Mr. McClone suggested, maybe because it's part of our budget, that we should maybe review it and see what the difference would be on a dollar amount rather than the 1.25 across the board. And review it then next month for approval.
Supervisor McClone?
Since my comments earlier, I've had a number of people in the county board that said to me, hey, we see that as important. So I know I threw a curve at everybody, but I don't know that the budget will get approved next month if we don't refill it.
Question?
Supervisor Craig.
This is for Mandy. Why don't we do a dollar amount? Because I'm thinking that sounds like a good idea. So why is it better from a personnel standpoint, or human resources, I guess, to do a percent? In other words, why is it that that's what we've typically always done as versus what Joe was suggesting?
I think that's just what you're saying. I mean, for the most part, that's what cities, towns, counties, municipalities, school district, UW system does, is a across-the-board increase. So you're moving your whole compensation structure at the same time. That doesn't mean that you can't do some other hybrid combination. You have 3 different compensation structures here for the majority of our employees. Obviously, elected officials, you have to set those by resolution. Reserve deputies, bailiffs, those are all done by resolution. But the bulk of employees are either a Lakeview Manor wage schedule, a department head wage schedule, and then the majority of your employees are on that, what we would say, the main structure. But all of those are step-based across the board. So one of the advantages of doing across-the-board increase is you adjust that whole schedule up. So every rate, every step on there moves by that same percentage. If you did a dollar amount, it doesn't mean that you couldn't do that. We'd have to decide how does that get broken up then? What does it all go on each one of those steps? Is it just on the base step? Is it on the midpoint? Is it on what their actual rate is now? So there'd probably be some questions to sort through, is how you're going to divide that back out. Does it come to an hourly cent amount versus 25 cents an hour for everybody versus a percentage? I mean, there's all different ways you could slice that pie. But typically, I think most people do it across the board just because that's what's more traditional in compensation structures. Well, to some extent, yeah.
Mr. McClone?
I'm gonna go back to, we were trying to compact everything together way back when. We spent a lot of money with Charlie Carlson. I think we're still spending money with them, and this is just gonna spread it out again, and that's why I'm against the 1.5 across the board. Or 1.25 across the board, excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any other comments or questions before we vote?
Yes, over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So if we vote yes, it's to pass the increase of 1 point whatever percent. If we vote no, it is to not allow the 1.5%, 1.2%. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Supervisor Craig.
How does that impact? It would not impact the budget. I think this is a question for Heidi. What does that do to the budgets with all their lines?
Well, if it doesn't, if the resolution doesn't pass, we'll pull that out of the budget. Again, then the finance committee would have to determine what resolution is gonna come to the county board at the public hearing, because, again, you wanna capitalize at least on your allowable increase. Because once you don't utilize that, you kind of lose it. So then you're already putting yourselves a little bit, we would have to evaluate that, the finance committee, as to what, then we bring it back to the resolution, as a resolution to the county board.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, I relate to a lot of counties. Any of the counties I ever talked to never gave a flat sum increase. It's always been a cost of living. Of course, in the private industry, you can do it both ways. I've always preferred the cost of living personally, but so it can be done either way. Any other questions or discussions? Yes, Supervisor Murphy.
I'm trying to understand this flat rate increase of, Mr. McClone, are you suggesting that, say, everybody gets the same increase? Or are you suggesting that, because if they don't, then if we go with the 1.25%, it's the same thing?
No, back to my original statement is if you're a $100,000 a year person here and you get 1.25, you're getting $1,250. If you're a $50,000 employee here, under that 1.25, you're getting $625. And my response was that I'd like to take the total amount and then divide that by the total amount of employees, and that would be our flat rate. We're also giving people who are at the ceiling $525 that were locked in, and that probably could even be more than many of our $50,000 a year employees are getting. And those things bother me.
That's the way I understood this.
Right, okay. I hope I'm clear. I do think it has to go back to the committee that put this together, too.
You suggested that it would be different, that it wouldn't be divided evenly.
Well, you have to decide that. Is it gonna be a flat lump sum payment to everybody? Is it so much a cent per hour? Is it different for salary versus hourly? I mean, those are the kind of things I would just wanna know so that when we, do the calculation, we know what some of your thoughts are.
I meant flat rate, so it was not.
Like a lump sum.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify this.
I've never seen that. In my time as an employee, it's always been a percentage, and it didn't make any difference if you made $200,000 a year or you made $10,000 a year. I mean, I accepted that. I don't agree with flat rate. Thank you.
Just to clear this up in my own mind, Mr. McClone, so in other words, if we had someone here that's been here 10 years getting $100,000, or somebody just started at $50,000 last year, he would get the same amount as the guy that's been here 10 years, or girl.
I think that has to come out of your committee, but that's the way I presented. It isn't in stone there. I think you could look at that in committee, but my belief is that everybody pays the same amount for milk and gas. And that's why I'm trying to equalize it out and keep the system together.
Supervisor Murphy?
Listening to all of this back and forth about cost of living and how we determine cost of living, and if you look into that, there are numerous ways that people throw the term cost of living. It can be on an annual basis, it can be on a quarterly basis, depending on all of that. What I'm most concerned about is we hear, like from Chuck today, the wonderful work that his department is doing under his leadership. He's one of the higher paid people. He has people in his department all the way down to just beginning wages and that. I'm most concerned that Waupaca County has positioned themselves into being not a place to leave, but a place to come to work. We have to stay competitive. And staying competitive means that we value those people that are doing a terrific job. And to me, the 1.25% across the board is a fair way of looking at how we structure our salary, rather than saying we're going to put it in a pot, comes out to $609 per person. You know, if I was up near the top, which I never was, but if I was up near the top, I would feel disvalued by that. And after a while, the word gets out that Waupaca County, as far as those skilled managers and directors, they don't value them. And I'd hate to see that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any other comments before we vote?
Yes.
I was going to say the same thing, Jerry. You said it much better than I can. Thank you.
I have,
Yes.
I'm torn on this. If it's a cost of living increase, I go along with Joe. If it's a performance increase, I go along with Jerry. Is there any compromise that finance could do?
And actually, we have a twofold system. And maybe when Heidi talked a little bit about step increases, that's your performance-based piece. So on this wage schedule that we have, and we can get one out to all of you that has all of the steps on it. Grabbed one here. Yep. So there's this long, mine's all scribbled down, try and find a clean page. But so positions are listed on here. You have this step structure. And if you have a good performance evaluation, you can move through that step. And each step is about 2 to 2.5% separated across the chart. So that's your performance-based. The cost of living is what gets applied to the whole chart so that we stay competitive with the Portage counties and the Winnebago counties and Outagamie around us. So it's really two pieces. An employee could have a poor performance evaluation and not get their step increase and then only get the cost of living increase, or a person is performing well and receives the cost of living can get more.
Any other questions or discussion?
Could I ask Mandy a question?
Sure.
So an employee, if they have a good performance, they'll get their step increase plus the cost of living, is what you're telling us?
Yes.
Okay. So they could get, for example, Chuck, he could get 4 or 5% increase.
No, Chuck's different. Chuck's different.
Okay. I just pulled him out. I just pulled Chuck out because he was a department head.
Those department heads that are on that schedule, that even though that has a cost of living approach to it, the evaluation committee decides where individuals are placed in there, and their step structures are a little bit smaller. So there's a half, a step and a half. So. The likelihood that Chuck would get 5%, sorry, Chuck, is probably not going to happen.
Even though he probably would deserve it.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm just trying to clarify that we also we give the cost of living, plus they could get a step increase.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I just want to reiterate what I heard out there is that, and I'm totally aware of how other counties come in and offer our people employment at a higher rate. And we've got some awfully good people here. And I deal with the Outagamie counties and the Winnebago counties and right next door to us, the Wood counties and Portage. And they've got openings, and I want to see us keep our good people here and make sure they're reimbursed equally to other counties. We don't want to lose them. What I hear out there, we could lose them if we're going to just treat them, give them a lump sum here and a lump sum there next year, and some of them got tremendous responsibilities out there, and that's why they're paid the higher rate. That's why they would get the percentage of higher rates. So I I'm certainly for the cost of living increase. That's what I'm for. So any other questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carried 15 to 12.
Item E. Mandy, you might as well stay up here. I'm sorry.
Who's the fourth one down on the left?
I thought that for a second, and then I thought, stay, I don't want to assume
Item
it.
E is resolution number 29-1516, 2016 staffing, new positions, expansions, and eliminations.
Okay, I think they're all spelled out for you, listed in the resolution. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you.
First, we need a motion for approval, and we can get it. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Supervisor Fleece. Do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Pullman. Discussion or questions? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26 to 1.
Item F is resolution number 30, 15-16, oppose increasing speed limit to 70 miles an hour on US Highway 10.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors that US Highway 10 corridor between Menasha and Stevens Point designated speed limit remain at 65 miles per hour and not increased to 70 miles per hour for safety purposes. Be it further resolved that Waupaca County Clerk be directed to send copies of this resolution to Waupaca County legislators, DOT, Northeast and North Central Region, and Governor Walker.
Is there a motion for approval? There's a motion by Mr. Jonley for approval, a second by Mr. Fleece. Discuss. Questions?
If you travel Highway 10 now, you'd almost think it was in effect.
Oh, besides that, they're talking their phone jack.
Texting.
Any questions or discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Motion carries 26 to 1.
And Clerk Robbins has some appointments.
Well, we have a ratification.
Where? Oh. Got the wrong agenda, huh? Ratification number 11 of local 2771 law enforcement contract. Is there a motion for approval? A motion by Mr. Zob. Second by Mr. Spearings. Questions? Please vote.
Terry. Last chance to vote. Motion carries 27 to 0.
Now, County Clerk Mary Robbins has a couple of appointments.
Under the appointment under Board of Adjustment, we will not be appointing Mark Souther at this time. He does live within the village limits, and to serve on the Board of Adjustment, you cannot be in an incorporated city or village. So that one doesn't apply. But under the TID number 2, City of Manawa, the chairman is asking Vice Chair Gary Barrington to serve.
Is there a motion for approval by Supervisor Questman. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Muck. Any discussion? Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Carried 25-1.
I thought I voted yes.
Oh, we gotta get scared.
Your ex-buddy. Okay, you got the announcements and correspondence in your packet.
And Penny from UW Extension was handing out some township maps. I think she got them all to you.
And before we go today, it's Let's Go Royals. Let's Go Royals. I text Mike Jersley yesterday and I says, way to go, champ. Now for the final hurdle. Best of luck, Mike. What a great job. He says, thanks, Dick, but having to win 4 more is going to be real tough. Thought he'd be more confident than that, but that was his text to me yesterday. Oh, Supervisor Penny.
Under item number 13, section D, with reference to the circuit court branch, what is that? What does that mean?
You should have had it in your packet, the letter.
Is he
It was notifying you by law that there was a release in the county of a sexually violent person.
Oh, okay. Thought maybe he was retired.
It should have been in your packet.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah. Okay, that's it, folks. I guess there's a motion by Supervisor Asen and a second by Supervisor Spearing to adjourn. Please vote.
Last chance to vote. Carried 27-0.